Hello, and welcome to Smash Writing as we come to the end of the line. Saw 10 is released. It's the last movie in the franchise. Can Saw 10 breathe some life into the lifeless corpse that became of this franchise? Some big questions, some big follow-ups. And we're going into definite spoiler territory here. I'm going to talk about the movie. I'm going to talk about everything. So, if you haven't seen it yet, come back later. I will say I'll probably suggest this one. Alright, good. Got it. Let's go. On to the story. We open with Kramer getting an MRI. His diagnosis is not good. He's now counting months instead of maybe a year. And he goes to the group counseling for people like him in situations like him. Actually, we'll say the counseling. I think the woman deserved a game of herself. She said the line, "Every day is a gift." That's why it's called the present. That line deserves you being stuck into a Saw game. That's cringy as hell. I digress, though. He ends up bumping into one of the other people, after some time from group, and he had this experimental procedure done to him, and it cured him. And it's the Norway thing, the Norway case. And he gets the name Dr. Peterson. He sees a video of her and explaining that it was her dad who started this program, and she's taken it over, and she guarantees can cure all forms of cancer. And the only reason that they have to be quiet about all of this is because Big Pharma and Big Insurance are trying to shut them down. And he manages to get in contact with her, and she moves him into a group that's taking place a week down in Mexico City. He goes down there, and they clandestine meeting. Like, he's kidnapped all along the way from his cab driver to get him to this place. He meets everyone, including another patient who just had the surgery and everything. And they put him under, and he can see a little bit from his anesthesia what's going on. He wakes up in a different room, and Peterson presents some papers showing him everything is going good. Take this medicine twice a day and have your good life. But what happens is, when he was there, he was talking to a woman named Gabriella, and she teaches him about this tequila and how you drink it to celebrate. So, being a really smart guy, he uses these towers he saw when he was at their mansion for this procedure, and the towers he sees from his hotel room, and can using geography and everything, math, he locates where they were to find that the mansion is cleaned out, and a video teaching how to do brain surgery, and that was what he saw during the anesthesia. And when he removes his bandages, they didn't even cut into his head. It was all a scam. So calls are to be made, games are to be played. And first up is the cab driver, who passes his test. It was amazing. We actually get a passed test. But we move on. We have got the big games to play now. Valentina, Gabriella, Mateo, and Dr. Peterson are all kidnapped by the returning Amanda Young. And speaking of, I have to go on a bit of a tangent here. She looked fantastic. I loved the fact that Shawnee Smith got to come back. She looked so damn cool in the robes and in this. She just felt like she owned the room doing her big reveal scene and everything. And I'm even nostalgic for this franchise. I love seeing her back. Okay, we'll get into that later, because we get the first test with Valentina, who fails her first test. Who fails the test, and she's taken out. And the guy he met earlier, Parker, who was at the mansion when he was arriving, he shows up demanding his money back because, fraud. And they take hold of him. Amanda wants to do something to him. Kramer's like, don't worry, in time he'll have his own test to pass. And for next, let's focus on what's at hand. And she goes to Mateo first. And Mateo's got his little game, and he tries hard, just like Valentina, but he fails the test, leaving Gabriella's turn. Now, Gabriella was an interesting character because Amanda's kind of cheerleading her. She doesn't want to do this to Gabriella. She wants to take out the doctor, but she sees herself in Gabriella because they've been manipulating Gabriella through her addictions. But Gabriella passes her test. But when Amanda goes down to get her medical attention now, because you passed the game, you win, they're stopped by Parker, who has drawn a gun. He's actually with Dr. Peterson. And they go down, they unlock Peterson from her book. They put Kramer into it, and they attach one of the leg shackles to Amanda. And they're trying to stress, like, she needs a doctor, and Peterson actually takes out Gabriella to the enragement of Amanda. And they're about to put Kramer on this test that they were going to do for the doctor, but they were going to put Amanda on there with him, but the little kid, Owens, I believe his name was from earlier, is outside the building, and they put him on the second spot, which really throws off Kramer. And now both of them are being blood boarded, like water boarded with blood. And Kramer is like trying to take it himself because he got these two levers, which will be, whoever pulls the lever will be the victim here. And Owens puts it together, and he's trying to take it to save Kramer. But Parker and Peterson have had enough of this. They've got to get their money from the office. But when they pull the duffel bag, it slams the door closed, and the game begins. And the game Kramer is on turns off, and Amanda is able to unclip herself and run over to save Owen, and Kramer unclips himself. It was all ruse. It was all a big, long game, just as he said Peterson would have to do. They knew that Peterson was in on it because a cabbie told them. And they ended up fighting it out because only one of them can get an air hole as the gas is filling the room. And Owens and Kramer gives the kid all the money, and the three of them show themselves out, and we go to white. But not so fast. We have a mid-credit scene of back in the basement, because of course we're in the basement, and we can't let that go. It's the guy who, from the group, who told Kramer about the Dr. Peterson trials. He was in on it too. The scars that he showed from the surgery were fake. And Mark steps around, and we see Mark and Kramer, and they're about to put this guy through his own game, and that's when we are officially done with this movie. Alright, let's break it down with the review. Well, I'm normally not a fan of this stuff that we got going on anymore, where it's like, let's just have this movie between movie 1 and 2, or 4 and 5, and this movie takes place before 3, but not quite in some weird limbo. Thank you very much for this Halloween. I called it, by the way, in one of our earlier, it was a podcast, I believe I called it, not a video. But I called it. I knew this was going to happen. The exception to every rule, and this is an exception. This movie paid off by playing earlier in the franchise, because we got the return of Tobin Bell and Shawnee Smith. I had to check to make sure it was Tobin. Those two have always carried this franchise. This franchise went over the hill when the less screen time those two had. And seeing them back together, it feels like they didn't miss a day. They just stepped comfortably into this and ran with it like they didn't miss a step. Tobin Bell carrying that haunting, unstable genius menace to him, where he doesn't have to yell or scream, he just talks. And it just builds, that menace overflows him. Well, Shawnee Smith is just awesome. She is so good. I wish she would have done more in the horror genre. She just the coolest. She owns every scene, despite who's in it. You're watching Shawnee because just all eyes are on her. Then she performs amazingly, and it does help that a really good supporting cast surrounding them. The people who played Gabriella, who was played by Renata Vaca. So sorry I'm butchering your name. I apologize immensely. Octavio Hinosa, Mateo, Pauletta Hernandez, who plays Valentina, and of course, Sonova Makoti Lund, who plays Dr. Peterson. All of them did such a great job, especially since there's a varying degree of how much do you want to care about these people. You can care about none of them, but they did it in such a way, especially with Amanda sympathizing with Gabriella, feeling her pain and knowing that, sensing that Gabriella is a good person who doesn't want to do all this. She's just in trouble herself and shouldn't be tormented, while at the same time she's still building up that murderous side of her in the way she wants to deal with Peterson, who everyone is against, especially toward the end of the movie whenever she does get out with Peters. That she's such an unlikable character that you want to see in this trap. And Valentina and Mateo, there are various degrees, like how much were they being manipulated, how much did they actually want to be involved with this schemes. But at the same time, like, you can still enjoy their suffering. And that's such a fun dynamic. And we actually got 2 survivors this time. Some we're not even lucky sometimes to get 1 survivor. We got 2. And it did help enforce Kramer's, I'll let you live if you win. Because he does let them, well, he would have let Gabriella win, but Peterson cost that. And it was so much fun to see, because it did build stakes. When you see someone win the game, it builds tension and suspense about who else could win this game. If they won a game, could somebody else win? And it did such a better job even seeing the traps. The traps were pretty good in this movie. And there was still a lot of gore and everything, but it felt reserved compared to what we've seen in this franchise. And all in all, a great job with that dynamic too. I'll say this too. It was a very ballsy play of you to have that trap be a daydream. The amount of stuff you've done around that trap, and it was a daydream. Very ballsy. I applaud it. You did get me on the ending. Not quite the way you would think. I knew he was pulling something with Peters, Patterson, I believe. I just expected Mark to have a bigger role in this. And then once they ripped the bag down and started to drop, I'm like, oh, okay, I got you. I expected Mark to have a bigger role. That was my fault. I thought Mark would have a bigger role than what he did. I will be the one to admit, despite the fact I didn't really like some of them, I did kind of expect a big family reunion here. Kramer, Amanda, Mark, Dr. Gordon, Logan, a big old family reunion. We never actually had that. They were always like, here's another one, here's one over here. Would have liked to have seen them all working in tandem together, just for something different, something fun. But not here. Didn't happen. Negative. There are some nitpicky thoughts here. I was really curious about the dad, because the way that Patterson talked about it in the video, that her dad had passed away and she took over for him, but then handed around that she could call him and save Kramer when she was begging. It would have been nice to know one way or the other if he was alive or not, because I just assumed that all of this was made up. It doesn't mean anything. It's just a little confusion I had. The bigger one, though, is like, this is terrible for Saw 3, because it was such a fun dynamic watching Kramer and Amanda working together that I hate Saw 3 even more. I can't go back and fault Saw 3 for it. I'm not going to fault this movie for it. I mean, I could go back. I haven't ranked these movies yet. I'm not sure if I want to rank these movies. It's pretty obvious where all these movies would fall. It does actually kind of hurt Saw 3 a little bit because of how good this movie was. And a more serious one, and I'm a bit of a hypocrite on this. I know I've said before they need someone to call him out on his moral questioning here, moral decisions, and his slogan here of teaching people to love life through torment. But it can't be Peterson. It makes my case for it should have been Carrie that much stronger. Peterson can't argue from her bottom of the well. She's down there with him. Like I said, it just strengthened my stance on Carrie should have. been the one to call them out. In the end, though, I don't actually really have any cons for this movie. This was a hell of a fun movie. This is what the Saw franchise should have been. This is what should have been part 3. It was so much better. The pacing was really good. They did a really good job building up the story with Kramer. You had the 2 rising stars back. You had the 2 bright stars, not really rising stars. The 2 bright stars, and Tobin Bell and Shawnee Smith coming back. And just like before they carried this movie hard. They had a great supporting cast around them to help them out. The traps were all good. The gore was just the right amount. A movie. Bravo. Maybe even top 3. We'll see if I rank them. In that case, that's the end for me. Have a good day.